And for the final debate of tonight's mini debate marathon, the motion is the world should move back to the gold standard for currency. Arguing in favor of this motion is the Prime Minister, David. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The motion reads that we should move back to the gold standard. A little bit of explanation. Somewhere in the mid-70s, the world governments, pretty much at the time and by agreement, decided that they would agree to print their currencies of their countries based upon the productivity of those countries. Prior to that, they would print the currency based on the gold reserves that the countries had. And I would argue that was a fateful historical mistake, because what happens when you put the currency printing process in the, based on the labor output of the country, is that too many hands get in the pie. Then what you effectively do is turn the entire business over to the corporate elites, because they will argue that we should print and print and print and inflate and inflate and inflate, and that's what's happened, because then there's more money in circulation to buy their products. Look what happened, for example, with this kind of inflation in Zimbabwe, you know, where it takes $1 million to buy a loaf of bread. So that's all very well. It was limited to Zimbabwe, but when the Americans start inflating their money, as they did with the bailouts and everything else, and printing and printing and printing, if part of your particular portfolio is exposed to American products, and you have U.S. Treasury bonds, fine, they're going to pay you 4, 5, 6%, the percentage doesn't matter. 10 years down the road, they're going to pay you back in U.S. dollars that are worth zip. So every country in the world is subject to that. So when the American inflation sets in seriously, we all suffer. If we had a gold standard, that would not have happened. So what we have to do is get governments out of the business of manipulating the economy and make them simply players and not the referees that we have today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. And arguing against the motion, please welcome the Leader of the Opposition, Gabriel.
Hi. So I think that the debate is about gold. And it's about whether we should go back in time, well, not in time, but we should start using gold again. And I really think that the Prime Minister was talking more about cleaning the government rats who steal and manipulate money. I really think that it was kind of, maybe it was a mistake at that time, but as of now, I think it would be so, like, silly to go back to use gold. Why? Because we found much more better usages of gold. Gold is used in electronic computers and stuff like that. We found an use for gold nowadays. We use it in airplanes because gold is like a really good conduces electricity so well, and it also it's able to handle temperatures, and it's basically almost indestructible. So I'm telling you, why would you use that material that has so many uses and just have it in your pocket? Moreover, it's not practical. Like, how would it be? Like, I mean, bills are paper. I can give you a bill and all that. But if I had this huge, gigantic rock and I would throw it at you, that would make no sense. I would say that we should, I think that it's really a ridiculous thing to say that going back into using gold would be better. We're actually evolving as a society, and as a society, if that's the argument, we should clean the government, we should protest, and we should do different things in order to make our lives better, the government. But we're not talking about the government. Here we're talking about gold. And yeah, of course that they've manipulated it, and like because of that there's inflation or all that economic issues that I'm not like a mathematician, but I think it's not about mathematicians. I should have studied something dealing with economy. But my point here is that you're talking about gold, you're talking about material that is not the same as just paper or the coins that we use. Those materials are like not as useful, and like with gold, there's still more research to be done. Gold has so many uses, and using it as something that is just as primitive, I would call it even primitive, I think that we are in a time where we should solve those issues like socially. The government is one thing, but I think that gold has had a good transition into being used in science instead of as a coin. That's why I think that we should abolish this proposition.
Thank you, Gabriel. And for closing remarks, we have the Prime Minister for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We are not talking about using gold for coins. I was saying that prior to 75, we used paper money and some silver money and God knows what else. But we're talking about using gold as a basis for printing the money. In other words, where there could not be a run on the banks because they could only print up to the value of the gold that they had. We're not talking about using it as the actual currency itself. And if gold, as my honorable opposition member says, is used in other industries, that only will elevate the value of it and make a greater demand for it. And if we produce more of it, well, then we can print money accordingly. But what we do have to get rid of is basing the entire money structure of the planet, really. That's the next big boom, because all of the financial mechanisms out there now are overvalued. In other words, there is something in the order of $100 trillion out there chasing around about $60 trillion of output. And that's the next big thing that we have to worry about. And the corporate elites are at the heart of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. And now for the tally of the votes. Those that are voting in favor of the government, please raise your hand. And those who are voting in favor of the opposition, please raise your hand. It is 13 to 8. The motion is carried. Thank you.